Being a chartered manager means that you are a specialist in that area, and it means you've got all the skills to do the job to the best of its ability.
You are seen as a leader, a true leader who has credentials behind the great work you've already been doing.
It's enhanced my understanding, it's enhanced my skill set, it's improved my mindset.
It makes all the difference.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Future Leaders Finding Your Voice digital event. My name is Amelia, and I'm an event delivery coordinator at CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box, and feel free to ask any questions you have for our speakers, and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A session. I will now hand over to Rebecca Patterson, the Board Secretary of the CMI South East Board, to begin today's event.
Thanks, Amelia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event, Future Leaders Finding Your Voice. I hope today you find some valuable insights from the conversation and take away something interesting to take into your future leader journey. I'm Rebecca, and I'll be your host today, joined by Amy, Bacola, and Harvey. Like our speakers, I was on the Local Government Graduate Scheme after finishing my degree in 2023. Now, I'm a Policy and Insight Officer at Bracknell Forest Council, and I also sit on the CMI South East Regional Board as the Board Secretary. Now I'm going to pass over to our speakers to introduce themselves, and also when you introduce yourselves, if each of you could answer the following question. When you think about finding your voice, what has that meant for you personally in your career? So Amy, I'll pass it to you first.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy. I'm coming towards the end of my time on the Impact Local Government Graduate Programme. I spent my first year at Tandridge District Council, and I moved to Reigate and Banstead Borough Council for my second year. Across the programme, I've done a mix of placements, starting in community partnerships. I've done 2 project support roles as well, one on community asset transfer and one on reopening a theatre. So it's been really great to get experience of 2 different councils, different placements, different managers. As part of the grad scheme, I'm also completing my CMI Level 7 management qualification. And that connection to CMI, plus knowing lovely Rebecca, is what encouraged me to join the CMI South East Board as a board member in December. And it's been an amazing opportunity so far. It's pushed me outside my comfort zone, helped me to build my leadership skills, and given me a space to grow alongside people who are passionate about developing future leaders. When I think about finding my voice, for me, it's been about learning how to contribute confidently, even when I'm surrounded by people with more experience than me. I've learned that your voice develops gradually through curiosity, through building relationships, and stepping into spaces that might feel slightly uncomfortable. And those small steps can really help you feel like you belong in the room, and that's where your voice really starts to come through.
Great, thanks, Amy. And I'll pass over to Bacola to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Bacola Finidi. I'm a management trainee at Redbridge Council. It's my second year, so I've been there for 2 years now. Like the rest of you said as well, so I'm also on the impact scheme. I'm currently in a placement in procurement and commercial. I've done 3 previous placements. My first one was in project management and commercial services. I've done quality in adults and children's, and I've also done policy and equalities as well. I'm also a board member of CMI London. I studied business management and economics at Nottingham Trent University before moving on to this role. So when I think about finding my voice, I think it's meant a few things for me. I think mainly overcoming my imposter syndrome, as this was my first sort of big girl role. So stepping out my comfort zone, putting myself out there, sort of taking lead more and volunteering for things. That was a big step for me. And I think it's a big thing for people who just start work as well. I think sort of engaging more, building networks, things like that. I think that's what I think about when I think about finding my voice.
Great, thanks, Bacola. And Harvey, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Harvey Aldershaw. I'm a national management trainee on the Impact Local Government Graduate Scheme at Barnsley Council. Before I got this role, I was at the University of Birmingham studying law criminology, doing a range of different modules on environmental law and the legal history of legal systems around the world. And that led me on to wanting to explore policy a bit more. And then this local government graduate scheme was a really great opportunity to explore that. So I've done a range of different placements over the 2 years that I've been on the course. So I started in the arts and events team, working a range of town centre outdoor events and activities at Christmas markets and light festivals. And then I moved on to the strategic housing team, where I worked on a range of master plan, long-term visioning projects, as well as acquisitions and demolitions projects. And then moving on to my third placement, I was in the Chief Executive's office, where I supported various visits. I supported senior management and the Chief Executive with their day-to-day roles in various capacities. And then I'm currently now in the public health team, where I'm working with a range of teams across our Growth and Sustainability Directorate to try and embed a Healthy Places approach into their work and their everyday thinking across their strategies. And finding your voice is really important to me, because coming into this role, coming into my first role, like professional role, I really struggled with sort of my self-confidence, and whether that be in sort of public speaking, in feeling like the most inexperienced person in the room, and having the confidence to speak out and say something, especially if I don't agree with something or think we should be doing something differently. But in my time on this scheme over the last 2 years, I've had a lot of managers and a lot of support from peers and other people around me that have really encouraged me to speak up and made me feel safe and supported where I can do that. And I think that's why it's really important to me.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Harvey. And thanks all of you. I think you've all sort of touched on what we're about to sort of discuss in the conversation. So I think if we move into the fireside chat now, we often hear from young people in the workplace that confidence can be a challenge, and that imposter syndrome is really strongly felt, especially early in your career. So a question to all of you really, but how do you build your confidence and find your voice when you're often surrounded by people with far more experience?
I'm happy to jump in on that one, Rebecca. So I think for me, you have to understand that being new is completely normal. Everyone's starting at different workplaces, different stages in their career. And I think sort of using those people around you, and rather than finding it intimidating that they've got more experience, really getting the benefit of that as well. So just asking people questions, even if they're really basic ones of day-to-day things like how to use a printer, how to present slides, that kind of thing, that just helps you prep for meetings. And I think also just asking questions on the work itself as well. When people can understand that you're genuinely interested, they're more than happy to find time and answer your questions as well. And I think that the last thing as well is being visible as well. Being able to, I know everyone's keen on working from home now, but being able to be there and have that kind of small talk and getting to know people as well can make me feel more confident when I'm even making small contributions in meetings, as people already know who you are and you've got that positive relationship with them.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Go on, Bacola.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's important to be curious. I think when I started, I was a bit shy, but I have a natural, very curious instinct. So I'd ask a lot of questions, and I just like to learn about a lot of things, especially like in placements like quality assurance in adults and children's, where I really didn't know anything about that world. I would ask loads of questions, and it was sort of amusing as well for them, because it was like they were just ready to answer everything. And I just think it shows you shouldn't be scared to ask these questions, because you know you're new, and that's what it's about. That's how you learn. I think that's how you build your confidence as well, because you gain, well, for me personally, I gain confidence from knowing what I'm talking about. I don't really like speaking on things I don't know much about. So I think that's a really good one. And I think just understanding that there's a lot of value in what you have to say. Although you may be new and people have more experience, you also have been through things as well. And you can add value with your ideas and, you know, be innovative, things like that. And yeah, I think it's good to lean on your support systems, you know, your manager, your colleagues, just get to know people. And yeah, just step out your comfort zone.
Absolutely. Harvey, have you got anything?
Yeah, I'd really echo what Amy and Bacola were saying about just, you know, taking the time to observe and listen and read up on things at first, because obviously it is quite daunting coming into something new, especially if you've not got experience in that area, so moving around different placements. But once you've sort of put in the groundwork, and also I think it's really important having informal conversations with your managers, with your peers, leaning on support systems. Say at my organisation, we've got a young employees network, which has around 70, 80 people in that are all meet up sort of semi-frequently, and they message. We have sort of a Teams chat, and we talk about things, and we sort of share knowledge, share contacts, and that's really useful for getting to know people. And then when you get to those more formal meetings or meeting new people within the organisation that are maybe a bit higher up, you feel much more confident because you've got that understanding of how the council works and you know a few people, and I think that's really important. And I think just not being afraid to say things when you think that something needs to be said, if you think something be helpful. I think that's something that you learn over time and you sort of feel more confident with, but it is really important.
Yeah, of course. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that everyone was in this position at some point. So, it all starts with, asking those questions. They always say no question's a silly question. It isn't really. But I think, Harvey, you sort of touched on that a little bit in terms of leaning on our support systems. Obviously, when you're early in your career, like your relationship with your manager probably plays quite a key role. So how has your relationship with your managers helped in terms of succeeding at this stage early in your career?
I think for me, I've found it's been really helpful having the different placements and having different managers, because I know on some of our grad scheme days, we've almost picked up on what things you can take that you really appreciate from a manager and what things maybe didn't work quite so well. So I think for me, sort of prioritizing having time, regular check-ins where you've got a weekly catch-up in the diary, and that's time to not just focus on assigning work, but also to kind of develop that relationship between you, and to not be afraid of saying what works for you and what doesn't work for you, because at the end of the day, they want to get the best out for you as well. So I think just being honest on what you want to achieve in terms of personal development as well. But also, as we kind of touched on before, about asking questions and being able to find your confidence. If things aren't that clear or you're not quite sure what's going on, just feeling comfortable to break down that barrier and say that to them, because that will help you develop confidence, and it will help them develop confidence in you as well, that you can take on the task and you're also have got that drive to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think a really good benefit of the scheme is getting to move around different placements and sort of experience different teams and different managers. It just sort of shows you how different people are. And I think your relationship with your manager is quite important, because that's sort of your first contact. I think it's good to sort of just learn what you can from them and just ask them questions, sometimes not to do with the work as well. I had a manager who was like sort of very busy, but I sort of made a point of just having like regular conversations whenever I'd see her in the office, just catching her quickly and just sort of getting what I need out of the conversation. You just sort of have to think about the long run as well. So yeah, I think it plays a key role. So I think it's just good to try and learn as much as you can.
Yeah, I'd really agree with that. I think the role of the manager is really important, especially early in your career, but throughout your career, even sort of if you're becoming almost the manager of everyone, there's still their support system. It's still really important having that support and having those meetings, like say informal meetings, but as well one-to-ones, and giving them feedback on their performance as a manager as well. Say, as Amy and Bukola have touched on, moving on different placements and having different managers, you see a lot of different management styles. People that are more sort of laissez-faire, more sort of let you get on with things. Other people that are much more, there's much more check and challenge. And I think it's important, the more you experience it, to you develop an understanding of what you like in a manager and how you'd like to be managed. I think it's important to talk to your managers about that, and generally they will take that on, and because then that's mutually beneficial. It gives them a better person that they're managing if they feel supported and they feel listened to, and the feedback that they're giving is received in the right way, and that it's important, it's successful, and it comes across. and then also giving that feedback to their manager, then they can think about how they think about manage other people within their team, and then also how they're managed, and it goes up along that chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always say that, I suppose, no matter where you are in your career, you've always got something to learn. And actually part of your leadership journey, you might not be in a management position at the moment, you might be early in your career, you might be a few years into your career, but actually by being able to give that feedback, you are also learning how to kind of use those management and leadership skills. So yeah, definitely really beneficial to be kind of honest about your development there. And, you know, you've got to invest in yourself and your career journey, and then those around you will support that. In terms of support systems, obviously your manager is a very key one. Maybe thinking kind of outside of work, or I suppose inside Harvey, you touched on the Young Employees Network, but do you have any other useful support systems in place to help you thrive, and kind of how have you utilised those in the last few years?
Yeah, I think your local board, so like for me, the CMI London board is important. They sort of help you show like a good, consistent standard of what good leadership should look like, and just to have regular conversations as well. So that's a good support system. I think for me, my grads that I came in with in my council, it's just nice because, you know, you all have that sort of same experience coming in together at the same time, things like that. And just like the grads above you as well, sort of learning from them, seeing what worked, what didn't, learning from their previous placements, things like that. I think the impact scheme in general as well. So we have like regular grad meetups and things. So sort of learning from, you know, different experiences from different councils. That's quite useful as well. I don't know if every council has a sort of mentoring scheme, but my council has that. So learning from my mentor has been quite useful as well. He's just like helped me with general career and council advice. So that's been very useful. And I think just your colleagues in general in the workplace, speaking to different colleagues, just learning what happens in their sector, because, you know, the council is quite big. So just learning about different areas of the council. Those have been like my main ones, I'd say.
Okay, thanks. Harvey, Amy, do you have any other support systems? Or?
I mean, I think you touched on loads there, Bukola, and I echo that the graduate scheme that we're on has been amazing for that, and sort of having a cohort of grads around you. I guess slightly different to you, Bukola, I haven't had other grads around me when I've joined my council, so I've had to sort of reach out to the grad networks a little bit more. And that's how I met Rebecca as well, who was like my buddy on that scheme, and having people like that who you can sort of have really open and honest conversations with, that's not just your manager, because sometimes it's easier to go to someone who's sort of external from that, and they can give you a little bit of advice. And even if that is other colleagues within your place of work, and maybe you're working with them, and just to kind of get different ideas or viewpoints, I've found that really useful to learn from. And again, being part of CMI, just doing something separate where it's so focused on leadership as well, and there's so many amazing people on our board and across the other boards that we've met so far, who you can have really reflective conversations with on leadership. I think that's been really helpful in me sort of developing my leadership skills.
Yeah, I'd say that I have a lot of the similar support systems as Bukola and Amy, and the way of saying that's being part of a regional board, CMI regional board, has been really useful. I forgot to mention earlier, but I'm part of the North East Yorkshire and Humber side regional board, and I think it's really given me a great opportunity to get to know people and work with people that I wouldn't know otherwise. That being sort of more senior in their career and more experienced, but also being in different sectors and at different organisations and other places within the North and Humber for me. So that's been really important for that. And then similarly, that support system of graduates on the impact scheme, the Young Employees Network, as I mentioned earlier, and then my council also has a mentoring system. So I've got a senior leader who's like a head of service who's my mentor, and I meet up with him, and that's really useful to get different perspectives on my career, different perspectives from people at different stages of their own career, and that's really useful to have that holistic vision from different people that you can sort of, it all comes together to be really supportive overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo what all of you have said, really, but I think over time, obviously I've come off the graduate programme now and I'm in a permanent role, but you find those support systems as you go along, and it's really, don't take them for granted. It's really useful to be able to kind of keep hold of those, and different things for different things. Sometimes it's an informal conversation where you just want to bounce something off the wall, and sometimes it's a genuine, let's talk through this issue, and can you help me solve it. But also kind of learning through observing. So always kind of looking at the senior leaders in the room and what are they doing, and not copying them, but building your own skill set and becoming your own authentic leader, I think is really key. Talk about finding your voice. It's finding your voice, your own voice, and you kind of have to build that through all of those different systems. Great, thanks all. Well, obviously we just talked there kind of about building confidence. In terms of thinking about leadership and management skills, if we think about kind of how you might have to manage upwards when you're early in your career and you might not be in a specific tailored management role, what does managing upwards look like when you're kind of early at this stage in your career? How do you sort of handle kind of challenges and difficult feedback there?
I think we sort of touched on this before. I think it's important to sort of voice your needs, as a graduate, and know, well, first of all, you need to be aware of what those are, and then what you want to achieve. And then I think it's important to sort of voice that to your managers and sort of let them know what you want out of your placement. I think that's something I learned, especially from my first placement, sort of just knowing, what targets you want to hit, what things you want to get into, and sort of just laying that out and letting your manager know. I think that's very important. I think asking for regular feedback as well. I know sometimes this might be a bit much for some people and they don't want that, but I think it's a good way to grow and learn, sort of see what you're doing well and what you need to improve on. I think a key one for me as well was getting clear briefs. I found that a lot of managers, because they're just so wise and they sort of know a lot, they would just really get into things and sort of just talk a lot at you, and I would just make a clear point that I need a sort of clear brief so I know exactly what I'm doing, instead of going back and forth, things like that, and just sort of making that clear. I think in terms of handling challenging feedback, I think obviously a key thing is to stay professional, but don't shy away from just highlighting what you want to learn and sort of what went wrong, and just sort of just working through the issues with your manager and seeing how you can get past that. But I think if you have worked hard on something and that's not being recognized, maybe just sort of breaking your work down and sort of just getting that understanding, basically, because sometimes it's your responsibility to sort of push for what you want. So I think that's important.
Yeah, great. Amy, Harvey, have you got any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think everything Bukola said is bang on, really. And I think it sort of goes back to what we were saying before about having that relationship with your manager as a starting point. And if they're a really good manager, they'll also be asking you about things that they can do differently as well, and not being afraid to have those conversations to say about how you work and how they can improve as well. I think that's really key to managing upwards, and that just makes the whole relationship feel more collaborative than sort of hierarchical. And I think it's just about sort of having that shared understanding. As Bukola said, if a brief isn't clear, then it's really important to get clarity on that as well, and that will sort of help them improve in future for other people, so they can see that's clearly what you need. Just to touch as well on getting maybe negative feedback or just feedback in general, it can be quite tricky sometimes, depending on how it's delivered, and sometimes it can be delivered. Everyone's stressed, everyone's busy, and as Bukola said, you can work hard on something and you need to have a kind of constructive conversation about it. And I think as humans, you can quite often act of instinct. I can feel almost emotionally about it because you've put that work and drive in, but just kind of detaching from that and speaking in a calm environment and maybe going through it and some specific points as well on what you can improve on, and that just makes it a lot clearer than just redo something again. So yeah, I guess using that feedback to help you develop yourself as well, and to be able to pass on how you would like feedback as well. That will also help your manager or whoever it is giving it to you in future to help them be a better manager themselves.
Definitely, I agree with everything you just said. I don't think I've got much to add because it was very comprehensive from both Amy and Bukola. But I think, it's just really important to stress the importance of conversations with your manager, and making sure they know what you can bring, whether there's any sort of specialized skills or anything that makes you stand out in a way, or something that you really want to get involved with as well. And they can leverage that, and then that really helps sort of set out what your role is within the team and how they can use you, and then that might help you to move upwards.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I think those open and honest conversations, and obviously we talk about psychological safety quite a lot, and you have to make sure that you kind of do have that relationship with your manager, but it is totally fair to want to say, actually, I want to improve this. Can you help me do that? Because early in your career, no one expects you to be perfect from the get-go. We're all still learning things. But to be able to openly acknowledge that that's what you want to do, I think is such a valuable skill in itself, to have those conversations. So yeah, we'll obviously talk about kind of having those conversations, and I suppose setting some boundaries as well. Sometimes we work in a culture now that can kind of feel like there's an energy of sort of constant urgency. And I suppose when you're early in your career, you still really want to meet those expectations. So just to all of you really, but how do you protect your time and your energy whilst you're working in those kind of urgent culture environments, whilst also trying to meet the standard that's kind of been set out for you?
I think...
Yeah, go on.
In this situation, I think it's really important to not be afraid to say no. And I know it's really hard. It's much easier said than done in most situations, especially if you're early in your career and you want to make an impression and you want to show that you're willing to do things. But it's really important if you're busy, if you've already got a lot on. And I think it's really important to have those conversations with your manager if they're, say, assigning you a lot of work or giving you a lot of things that maybe you need a bit more training, a bit more experience in, to say that to them and to have that open conversation. And if you establish those sort of lines of dialogue through those informal chats, through regular one-to-ones, then you'll feel more comfortable having those conversations. And then, recognizing that by taking a lot of things on and taking a lot of different things, it'll affect the overall quality and accuracy of the rest of your work. And that's something that's really important, and it's you can't jeopardize what you're currently doing to take on more to then try and impress. I think it's a tricky balance sometimes, but it is an important thing to remember that you don't have to accept everything and take everything on at the same time.
Yeah, I really agree with everything you said there. I think it's very important to sort of voice your capacity and sort of what you're able to take on. I think as a grad as well, when you first join, you want to impress, you want to put yourself out there, you want to show that you can do good work, but then, you can get burned out. So I think it's important to sort of put value on putting out good work rather than taking on too much as well. Because I think it's important to have a healthy work balance. So you're having those discussions with your manager, sort of letting them know. And I think as well, they will probably likely ask you as well if you have capacity to take things on. So I think it's just important to be honest with yourself, and just to not feel pressured to do certain things as well that are outside of normal hours, things like that. And just having that protected time as well in your calendar. Sometimes just putting in busy or no urgent meetings if you have something specific that's due really soon, things like that. And just protecting that time. And just making your manager aware of any frequent changes, things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you have said. And I think you both kind of touched on the being able to say no part. And I think just whatever stage you're at in your career, everyone is kind of, you want to impress, you want to make progress. But actually, I guess going back to sort of explain to people really clearly what you want and how you want to develop, maybe what your goals are, and whether those extra bits of work align with that goal and what you're going to gain out of them, because otherwise work can just be chucked around everywhere. And as you both said, you want to still be able to deliver it to a high quality as well. And sometimes you're balancing sort of multiple projects as well. And I think just sometimes saying to your manager or whoever's setting you the work, maybe if you've got two things that sort of need to be done at the same time, just understanding what your priorities are, and they can help you with that as well. If something's more important, maybe you can say, I can do this by this time, but I wouldn't be able to get that done as well. See how they feel about it and have that open conversation. But certainly just being honest with it all, rather than keeping it to yourself and getting stressed out that you can't achieve something. You can I often use my calendar as well, even if it's not meetings, just to kind of map out and reserve that time and know what you need to achieve on that day as well, or for the week upcoming. So reserving that time for yourself to develop as well, I think is really important.
Yeah, thanks all. I think it's often easy to forget that actually a leadership skill in itself is time management and learning kind of to have those difficult conversations. And I think it's very easy to think that you have to do everything all the time, 100% be perfect to succeed, but actually being able to respect yourself and your working environment actually aids that success. So yeah, really, really great insight there. Okay, great. Well, I think we might move into the Q&A section now. We've had a few pre-submitted questions, so we'll go through a few of those first. And I think the first question was from Samila, and it says, if you had to give 3 top tips for aspiring leaders, what would they be and why? So maybe if each of you give 1 top tip each.
Yeah, perfect. There's a few I give. If I give one, I would probably say being visible so that you can get yourself known, you can build those relationships with everyone. People will get to know how you work, your personality, come to you for more stuff, just come to you for a general chat. And I think that's a really good way to sort of build up your credibility within your organisation.
I would say to say yes to opportunities before you're sort of fully 100% ready. I think that was a big one for me because I'm an overthinker and I procrastinate a lot. And I think that can sort of stop your growth if you sort of let it take over. Because, you know, sometimes you want to be a perfectionist, you want to get things right the first time, but, you know, growth won't happen in your comfort zone. So I think if you put yourself out there more, you say yes to more, you learn more, you meet more people, you build more relationships, those skills. So I think it's important to sort of take opportunities as they come and sort of don't wait for like the right time. I think that would be my advice.
Great.
Mine was very similar to Amy's actually, but it's what skills that you have and how you can stand out in the organization and make yourself known as someone who can do a specific thing or does something really well, as opposed to just being seen as the person that works really hard and takes on everything. I think it's really important to try and stand out within an organization, because then people get to know you, they get to know your value, and then you're more likely to be able to progress up those ranks within the organization or move around and really get to those high levels.
Great, thank you. And Samila, you can have 4 top tips, because similar to Bacola, I would also say that actually every opportunity is a learning opportunity, whether or not you succeed or fail. So there you go. Great. On to our second question then, from Simran. How can we as young people actively collaborate with senior leaders to be mutually beneficial?
I'm happy to take this one. I think that's a really good question. I think if you sort of look at it as they're able to bring in this strategic insight, but you can also bring this fresh perspective and curiosity as well. So often you kind of have this organizational culture that's sort of so focused on a routine, and things are often done in the same way. So having someone who's new to the organization, whether you're early in your career or you've come from a different kind of experience, I think that's really beneficial. And we're doing a lot of learning on the graduate scheme that we do as well. So having learned that, being able to bring that to meetings within your team and share bits of advice as well, because not everyone's always doing as many development or training opportunities. And I think that would really help as well. And I think actually senior leaders will really, really appreciate hearing those things from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree. I think it's really important when you're working with senior leaders, someone that's so high above you. It seems like they're sort of comprehensible, the gap between yourselves. But I think it's really important to recognize your strengths and their strengths and how you can be mutually beneficial. Obviously, they're in a position of lots of influence and power, and they've got a lot of experience. They probably have quite a generalist vision of their whole service area or the whole organization, whereas you might have some more specialist knowledge within the area, almost definitely have more capacity than them, and you might have more ideas for innovation and more creative ideas being new to the organization. And young, you might have a different generational perspective as well. So I think it's really important to leverage that and think that both, for your confidence in working with them and speaking up, and I think that's really important.
Great. Brilliant. And then I think we've got a question from Kevin. What would you say is the one key skill or attribute that allows someone to communicate with impact?
I think communicating your thoughts clearly. I think sort of knowing what you want to get across before you say something is important. So sort of having that purpose already laid out. And then just sort of structuring your answer around that. I think it's important to tailor what you're saying to who you're speaking to as well. You might say something in a different way to residents, for example, to sort of push your agenda across. So I think it's important to communicate just clearly and concisely. I think that's a good way to get your impact across.
Yeah, definitely. I think similar to kind of understanding who you're talking to. I think sort of having an empathetic mindset, I would say, that kind of empathetic communication tone is really important, because that can help you understand what someone's key priorities are, or their concerns, or the pressures that they're facing, and taking it from that approach of going in, understanding and open to what their struggles are. Then you can meet the kind of things that are most important to them. You can tick that off, present that, and you're just framing your message in that way that meets them where they are, really.
Great, thank you. Harvey, did you have anything to add on that one, or did?
I think I just echo what everyone else is saying. I think it's really important to communicate with intention and be evidenced in what you're saying, and show that you have an understanding of something, and then people generally will listen.
Yeah, great, cool. Well, I think we'll move on to some questions from the chat and the audience today. So we've got a question here that says, "You're also confident and young. I struggle with speaking. Corporate doesn't feel right. How can I improve this?"
I think it is really hard. I think you kind of I did my PGCE doing teaching just before I started this graduate program, and it is completely different, the tone and style that you need to speak in. And I think you do develop that. The more that you speak to people, the more meetings that you shadow, the more emails or however you communicate, you start to sort of understand the tone of the organization. But I think also just not being afraid to sort of show your own communication style as well. Everyone comes in different, and that's really valuable actually, when everyone's bringing in different ways of speaking, and just challenging that. And also, like, there's so much that I don't understand in terms of when you move to a new placement. It's almost like a new language in itself wherever you go. So all the acronyms, etc. I think just breaking that down, learning from people, and you start to develop that. And it might also make people reflect on how they can change the tone of the organization as well to be more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I think a key advice I'd say is to sort of learn by doing. I may look confident now, but when I started, I was like so shy. So it's not like a strange thought to feel like you're out of place. I feel like it just comes over time. I think just naturally, as you get more comfortable around, your peers as well and your team and things like that, that helps with your confidence. So yeah, I'd say learn by doing. Try to, speak with your manager, maybe let them know, things that you're a bit scared about or worried about. Like I remember with one of my managers, she saw that in like the team meetings, I wouldn't speak much. And we like had a conversation about it. So in our meetings, she would just sort of ask me questions and that would just help me speak up a lot more. And then from then on, I just started talking a lot more in my meetings. And I think from there, when you start trying new things, you sort of get used to it. So like in new meetings now, I'm more confident with speaking to people and just meeting new people, things like that. So yeah, I'd say just try to learn by doing, sort of speak with your manager and sort of work through those like fears in your one-to-ones, things like that.
Yeah. I'd really echo that. I think, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. I think it's also really important to try and leverage any shadowing opportunities you get, being in those meetings with senior managers and people that are experienced, people that have been in the corporate world for however many years, that have so much experience and it's just second nature to them. I think it's really interesting to see how they do it and just watch them and being present in meetings and just sort of taking in what's going on. I think that really helps. And say talking to your manager and say watching things, watching speeches, watching presentations of that sort of thing, just to get as much experience and as much knowledge of that, and then it'll just sort of come naturally.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, we have to remember that some of the best leaders are the most personable ones. So sometimes it can feel like you have to pick up all this jargon and speak in a certain way in meetings. And obviously, whilst there's a level of professionalism, one of the best things is to be authentic and be yourself, and not to lose that, because actually you as an individual bring so much value to the table. So also just try and kind of be yourself in that, because sometimes that's your greatest asset. Great. We've got another question here. Obviously, we've been quite positive, and some inspiring insights today. But actually, is anyone able to reflect on what are your difficulties and how do you deal with the problems in the world of work among Gen Z? I mean, I can kick off with this one in terms of, I think one of the biggest things for me is the world of flexible working now, and kind of, the difference in working remotely and in person and trying to build connections. I'm a office lover myself. I quite like to go in. I like to have that routine. I like to have those in-person connections, but I'm conscious that some of my colleagues might not prefer that way of working. So being able to balance that and really get the most out of the relationship building, especially when you're early in your career and you're trying to meet new people and shadow people, it can be a lot harder to do kind of online. So really kind of maximising opportunities I do get to do that in person has been valuable for me.
Yeah, I think that's a big one as well, because I'm sort of an in-person person, just with like most things. I think it's a bit harder as well, like with your team not all being in together, things like that. Sort of you can't really get to know people as much or as well. So I think the main thing is to maximise, like when you do get to speak with them, sort of just having those conversations, sort of maybe not speaking about work all the time, just getting to know each other. I think that helps. I'm trying to think of any more like difficulties not to do with confidence, because we spoke about that quite a bit. But I think, just the key thing, just trying to be as visible as possible, maybe positioning yourself in different places, different areas, shadowing different teams, different people, just learning as much as you can. I think that's like a key thing to help.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I was just not that I have too much more advice to give, but more just to say that the difficulty that I can understand as well. Sometimes being the youngest in the room and being Gen Z as well comes with almost like a stereotype that you might be really good at certain things. And I think just being honest with what you are good at. For example, I'm just thinking of like technology. You go into a room and you're the person who needs to sort out all the tech, but actually just being able to say, this isn't my skill set. It's just a really small thing I would add.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. We've got one here that says, how do you navigate meetings where you're put on the spot and don't know how to answer? This can be quite tricky when this happens.
Well, this is sort of similar, but not exactly what you're asking. But so recently I had a one-to-one with my manager and we sort of went through like my work plan, and she saw that I wanted to lead more projects. And she sort of just said, okay, I didn't think she would do it this quickly, but she literally put me on a project the day after. And she said, okay, you're going to lead this piece of work. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, the first meeting is today at this time, da da da. And I was like, all right. So I went to that meeting. Sort of, to me, I really didn't understand anything that was happening, because obviously I've just been introduced to it, but I just tried to take it in as much as possible. And she sort of introduced me to everyone and said, yeah, she's going to be the project lead, things like that. And then we sort of had another meeting, a stakeholder session, and I sort of like didn't know if I was the one leading that meeting or not, because obviously I've been made the project lead now, not her anymore. And so I just sort of asked her just to clarify. So I think that's one important thing. I didn't just go into the meeting thinking, okay, like I really don't know what I'm doing yet. I sort of made it clear to her that I'm not in that position to lead everything, but I am ready to take on what I can. So I think a key thing is being honest. In terms of being put on the spot in the moment, I don't know if I've been in that exact position and not, but I think if I was in that position, for example, with this situation, I think I sort of would have just made it clear, like my position. I would have said what I did know, and then I would have passed it on to my manager, for example. So I think just be honest with yourself, you know, don't try and, I don't know, make something up in the moment. You know, I just think that's just a lot of pressure on yourself as well. So yeah, I think that's how I would approach that situation. Just be honest and go about it the best that you can.
I definitely agree with that. I'd say, yeah, being honest in a meeting is really important, because no one knows everything. Even you'll be in meetings with the chief executive or senior leaders or MPs, and they don't know everything. There's a lot of situations where someone will say, I'll get back to you on that, or let me chase that up, let me follow that up. I don't have the information right now. Like it's a common occurrence, and it's something that I think it's important to consider. It's not just something that's unique to you when you're early in a career, and you shouldn't feel, it's hard not to feel sort of scared in that moment and worrying that you're sort of out of place and have a bit of imposter syndrome. But I think there's a way of dealing with it where you take on whatever they're saying and say, well, let me look into that and go back to you. And I think that puts you in a better position than trying to make something up on the spot, trying to guess your way out of a situation where you don't actually know the answer. But I think it's important to be honest what you do and don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just seen one last question. We've only got a few minutes to cover this, but kind of I think we've touched on it a lot earlier. But how can early career professionals build credibility in senior meetings when they have less experience than everyone else? And I think that kind of flows on quite nicely in terms of actually honesty is quite a key skill to have. And we've kind of touched on that a little bit there. But has anyone else got any kind of other insight there on that?
I think it's observing as well, and you start to sort of really get to know what's important. But I think as we kind of briefly touched on earlier, sometimes you might have more capacity than senior managers or whoever else is in that meeting. So you can actually maybe be the one who tracks the actions and makes really clear points from that meeting, that you can actually go away and think about points a little bit more, or go back to senior managers as well, and say, these are some really key things that I think we should be covering or bringing to the next meeting, sort of having that organization as well. But also not being afraid to just chip in and give the fresh perspective, like we said before, because that's all it's going to do is give an alternative way of thinking. There's no wrong answers. And if you think it might be valuable, then it most definitely will be valuable.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Amy. That's a great way to kind of finish on. So thank you, Amy, Harvey and Bukola, to all of you for your really useful insights. It's been a really interesting conversation. I hope the audience has got a lot out of there. I mean, we've talked about kind of making sure that you're visible, you're asking those questions, staying curious, and you're actually honest about your development and what you want. But in the same sense, not being afraid to say no when actually you need to protect your time and energy. So some really useful insights. And I think as managers, any managers watching this, hopefully they'll be able to take something away in terms of how to support those kind of future leaders in their teams to build them up. Because like we said earlier, usually those around you want you to succeed, and it's all about working collaboratively to do that. So thank you so much again to all three of you, and thank you to the audience for tuning in. If we haven't managed to answer your question, we will try and do so virtually offline. And this is the first part of a two-part series as well. So we have an event on the 2nd of September, Future Leaders Building Your Credibility, where we'll be touching on some of this stuff and more. So hopefully see you then. But thank you so much all for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
And that is it for today's session. Thank you to Rebecca, Bukola, Amy and Harvey for your insights and expertise. Please stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership, and thank you once again for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors and industry-leading accreditations.